In this video, I had the opportunity and privilege of interviewing a true entrepreneur, Michael Levy. He's founded companies before, sold companies. He was very successful in it. He's currently the founder and CEO of SOMATIC. They make robots that clean commercial bathrooms. There's no other way of putting it other than seeing for yourself.
Let's begin now.
What do you guys think of that? That's really cool, right? Besides being featured in literally all of these different publications, such as Techcrunch and the like, he also was involved in Y Combinator. Y Combinator, for those of you who don't know, is probably the most respected incubator of startups in the world. You don't get in there unless you're super legit. Companies that were in there were, for example, Stripe, Airbnb, DoorDash, Dropbox, Reddit, to name a few. There were 2,000 companies that went through Y Combinator, and he was one of them. The sky's the limit for him. I wish him the best, and this interview is really remarkable. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Maxon TV. I am joined by the esteemed Michael freaking Levy is on my show. He's the founder and CEO of SOMATIC. If you haven't heard about it, you will hear about it. He's probably going to be in Forbes, within the next 365 days.
Sure.
We'll probably see very soon. Michael, thank you so much for joining the show.
Get out of here with that. I'm super excited to be here. Like we were just talking offline before. I'm excited to learn from you because I've been enjoying kind of your previous chats, and just super excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
No, absolutely. This is absolutely my pleasure. Hey, I don't just wear a sweater for anybody. This was like a brand spanking new sweater. Brooks Feather, shout out. And but I still can't compete with your hair. Your hair is fantastic.
Too much. I'm honored.
There we go. So great to have you. So before we get into Somatic, what that's all about, how you started it, why don't you give us a little bit more about your background and tell me what really led to your absolute dire desire to clean bathrooms?
Sure. Yeah. Just grew up as a little kid. I'm like, I'm going to be a janitor. So,
Hey, janitor that
like,
makes millions of dollars, I'm down. Where do I sign?
well, I mean, it's a job. I always say when I'm in the industry, this is a job that is absolutely required. It's a necessity. People think of it as, oh, it's just cleaning, but it's actually cleaning and safety when it comes down to when you go into the bathroom, somebody was there and cleaned it. That's something that everyone needs. We're just hoping to kind of move things forward in the industry. So taking a step back. So yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and moved to Long Island through doing some school there, and just kind of grew up, um, maybe a classic Long Island childhood. But kind of something that I always wanted to do was I just had like a lot of varied interests, and so um, that that kind of manifested in, hey, what kind of job will I do, right? And I was just thinking, I don't know, I want to do this, I wanted to do like 7 jobs growing up, and then my mom said something really kind of nice to me. She's like, you can do all of those jobs, right? Kind of a classic mom statement, maybe. But what I took that was like, okay, so I'll do 1 job a day, right? And then I just at some point just realized, as like a little kid, even, like, that's not possible. So you know what? I'll just combine them, and I'll be a real estate developer. I heard somebody was doing that, and it's not for the classic reasons. It was more like I like to paint when I was a little kid. That's part of it. This is like a naive kid. I'm like, I'll paint the houses. That's on Sunday. And then on Monday I can build because I really like building stuff. Then on Tuesday I can do this. And so all these kind of aspects of the job, when I heard somebody did real estate developer, I just broke it down into all these different aspects. And I think that's kind of a similar theme, even, kind of carried me through. So I was walking around as a little kid saying, I'm, cop, fire, there's like all these kind of classic jobs, cowboy, whatever. And I'm like, I want to be a real estate developer, with the idea that I'm going to do these 7 jobs in one. Eventually, I went to school and blah, blah, blah. I just kind of was interested in technology, even though I was studying finance, because there's money in a lot of different industries. And I was kind of, again, that same theme about being varied. But then really how I got into tech was, I'm in school, I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, and I was taking a break from the finance side to go read the kind of marketplace and technology section. And I'm like, this should be my job. And nobody told me that I couldn't do that. So I'm like, okay, let's do something in technology. And then worked on a company with my roommates, blah, blah, blah. Just caught the bug and just kept at it. Eventually, with this company, I met this guy named Eugene Zasoba. He's my co-founder. It's kind of a long backstory there, but the fact is, he's one of the smartest guys I ever met. Great guy in addition to that. And we kind of just started working together on a previous project that I did called Chalkable. It's an education app store. He was CTO of that company, and I founded that with a friend of mine. Eugene was the first guy on board as CTO, and we were off to the races. After a couple of years of that, we ended up selling that business. Me and Eugene went off and go work on self-driving vehicles. And so this was kind of a scaled down version. It was just a delivery vehicle, but that kind of morphed into, that did not work out. So that was just our own money. And we were like, okay, what did we learn from that? And we took a lot of the learnings from that. And we said, if you want to get to a Boston Dynamics style future, okay, where you have a robot that can do a lot of things, you're going to have to break it down because it's a really hard challenge. So you have hands and feet. That was kind of the basic idea. Move around the world and interact with the world. And we said, let's do move around the world first. That was really what self-driving cars was for us. It wasn't Google. It was just the smallest bite we could do, which was delivery. Ultimately, that was even too big of a bite. And there was a lot of things that we learned from that. And then we said, okay, let's adjust that and go to market with something else. And that's how we get into bathroom cleaning. So there was a lot of aspects to the bathroom that makes it a special place where we think that robots can really get a strong kind of foothold, and we can grow the company from there. But ultimately, the high level vision is, I want to make robots. I want to, kind of add value to the world. I think the robots are going to do that. And then to get to that future that we kind of have in our mind, we kind of take the smallest bite we can, and that's what we're doing right now. This is kind of the first step.
That's wow, that's a handful. That's a lot.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
one funny fact. Well, it's a fact. Apparently, the average reader of the Wall Street Journal makes roughly $1.6 million. I have to look that up. But I think it's absolutely hilarious that while everyone is just sitting in class, you're reading the Wall Street Journal in college. That
Well,
says a lot about you.
I think well, I love the Wall Street Journal because as opposed to kind of other publications, I found that they were just giving me the facts. There was a little bit of kind of the story of something how it happened, but I felt it was kind of very it's middle of the road. I wasn't getting any kind of the writer's opinion or something like that. It was just like, hey, this is what's happening, and I found it very readable. Honestly, I didn't know what a lot of the words meant at the time in terms of the finance. Right, there was a lot of new words which I always liked, and you had to go look them up. They weren't in the paper. It wouldn't explain a lot of things, but I was curious, and it was kept me up to date. So yeah, I really like the Wall Street Journal.
It's a
I'm a fan.
fantastic paper. Yeah, I read it myself as well. Growing up in my house, actually, not only got the Wall Street Journal, we got the New York Times also. We're a unbiased household, I would say. So we read, but I mainly read the Wall Street Journal. The only thing I don't like about the Wall Street Journal is if you were, well, it's COVID now, you can't go to a movie, but never read their movie reviews. They will literally tell you
I
every
didn't even know they
single thing
Okay,
about the movie, and they will kill it for you.
good
So
to know.
never read the reviews. But
Good
their
to know.
paper is excellent. I do also agree that it's very middle of the road that gives you the facts, and it's business. It's very businessy
Yeah, I
type
enjoyed it.
of paper. Yeah, that's fantastic. So you mentioned that you started Chalkable with your co-founder, and
Yeah.
so you sold it. So I assume it was a great success. You moved on to self-driving cars. Like
Hmm.
that's like a big deal. Like it just
Big
just
jump.
to say, like you're going what was the thought process behind that? What was
Yeah.
you're not the type of guy to just do something without a plan. What was your plan at the time? Like,
Sure. So even with Chalkable, the way we kind of started that business, uh, I had a couple of ideas, and the let's like even a step back. Like, what makes me want to do a company is I just want to I want to get value. I obviously I want to kind of achieve things in my life, but big part of it, like, okay, why this versus something else? I just think like, okay, this is a problem that I hate. This is something that I hate, right? Maybe like a strong emotion, but I really disliked parts of school when I was growing up. And, I looked at in the university setting versus high school setting, and I was like, hey, there's all these tools that we're using as students. Why aren't we using them in school? Meaning like we had them at, we had
right.
online, you could kind of find Khan Academy or something else, but then they never used it in school, at least at the time. And then, okay, that was the impetus. Let's go make some Chalkable, something there. Um, and then so with self-driving, this idea, I even remember kind of sitting in school one day, just kind of drifting off, thinking about something, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to build this robot that could kind of walk to the store or run to the store or drive to the store and then get me something." And I was like, I could remote control it, grab something, and then bring it back because there was this store that I used to go to, and it was cold, and there was this problem that I just wanted to do, right? Because I was a kid, I couldn't drive a car, and it was always so annoying. I thought I could just have a robot do this, and I sketched it out, and okay, forgot about it. Years and years later, this wasn't like something I planned on ever actually doing. That just in back of my mind, I'm like, okay, so we're done with Chalkable. What am I doing next? And it just occurred to me, hey, it wasn't about robot. I wasn't thinking let's build a robot to go do deliveries. I was like, I just want robotics. I knew that there was going to be some value in the world. That's in the back of my mind. And I also just back of my mind, I had this problem. When I was growing up, I just really wish something could just bring something to my door. Why do I have to go to the store or go outside? Run. I'm too busy with my life. I'm having a birthday party. We need some plates. Plates should just show up. And so that's it. It was really not like build an education website or build a robot. It was just solve this particular problem or get this thing in my life that I wanted. Okay, now let's go execute on it. So yeah, it's super different kind of experience building Chalkable versus self-driving vehicle. We call it the Trike project. But that didn't enter my mind. That wasn't that wasn't like, oh, it's the same thing as the previous thing or so different. It was just a separate issue. And I guess that's like the being naive. I was like, okay, we could probably do this, even though it is a really really hard challenge.
Right. So, I mean, so the challenge that you were trying to, I mean, you can confirm the challenge that you were trying to fix was you're at a birthday party, you need some plates, you just need the plates to magically show up at your door. How did that
Yep.
lead to self-driving cars? Because technically, self-driving cars is only half of the solution because you
Sure.
still need to pick it up at the store and etc.
Yep. So okay, so in our case, don't think about it as a car in this particular product. It was more like a little pod or like imagine a cooler, right? Like one of those igloo coolers, but on some wheels. And it's super lightweight and it's kind of small, but it can drive on the street, so it can go really fast. And then just imagine that the person in the store, you paid online or something like that, they just drop it in. right? It pulls up in front of them, they just drop it in, and then it pulls up in front of your house, you grab it. And the idea was it just like, boom, now it's outside, just go grab it. That idea, right? So like you brought up that idea of the plates, right? At the birthday party. That was a real story that happened. And like, okay, someone had to leave the birthday to go get the plates. And it was just, hey, life would be better if we just had this thing when it shows up. So, and then you just start peeling back the onion. You're like, wait, 1 second. So maybe I could have a person to go bring it. Okay, but that's going to be really expensive. It's just plates, right? I mean, it might be $1.50 purchase. So you're going to really spend $5 to have somebody do it. And maybe you could, right? And from the way I thought about it was, if you take the idea even a bit further, let's say you're paying a person to go bring you the plates. Okay, you have Postmates or something like that, right? Or maybe you have DoorDash or one of those businesses. But for me, I knew that just in my mind, like the next step with any kind of progress, technology was going to kind of disrupt that business. And now you're going to have a robot doing it. And then that brings you to the question of timing, right? So is it early? Is it late? Is it too early, right? Because too early is also wrong. In our case, that wasn't particularly the issue. It was just a really hard challenge, and there's a huge learning curve to robotics. And I fully see that business happening. I mean, there's kind of big companies working on it. There's small companies. There's startups that raised a lot of money. So there's some great people working on this challenge. It's definitely going to get solved, and I'm excited to be a user. So that idea where you're going to be able to be at a birthday party, press a button, and a plate's going to show up, that's absolutely happening.
So going back, so when you were trying to run that company, what were the lessons that you learned? What did you do? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What exactly happened in the end, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, sure. We learned a lot from that business, and it really kind of was the genesis of SOMATIC as it stands today. So first of all, we learned about, practically speaking, like I said, there's a huge learning curve for robotics. So if you want to build something, get it out into the world, even just a prototype level or something that you're going to be doing testing on, it's quite difficult actually. And there's a lot of kind of knowledge base that's built up by talented people over the decades. And we try to get as much of that as possible, as fast as possible, and apply that. So there's online great resources, and it was just trial by fire. We just learned by doing. Had a lot of fun, tons of fun building that company, or that project, I should say. And ultimately, we built a vehicle. We built multiple iterations of that vehicle. So I'll give you a good example, something that we learned. So we started off. So there's so many challenges, questions, right? So you want to build something that gets you a plate from point A to point B. You're going to go sidewalk. You're going to go street. You're going to go, how big is the vehicle going to be? How big is the payload? Okay, you have all these questions. Well, you want to simplify kind of your thought process. So there's this phrase called first principles that a lot of people use. So I wasn't using that particular phrase, but I think it's just kind of, I called it like just logical thinking, because I wasn't a physicist by training, right? But I love that phrase, the kind of the first principles idea. But it basically just means you take kind of the lowest level things that you know that are true, and you work up from there. So sometimes that works, and that's a really strong way to think about it. But if there's too many challenges, and I think a lot of people do this on a day-to-day basis, they use analogous thinking, right? So they use like an analogy. So in our case, there was a lot of problems. And one of the things we used was analogy thinking to say, how many wheels should our vehicle have? And this was an actual question that we just asked, like what's the design of the vehicle going to look like? And the quick answer was, well, we don't know that much about designing vehicles. So let's look into the world. People must have thought of this, problem and tried a lot of things. And let's just see what they came up with. And they came up with 4-wheel vehicles, right? Because when you look on the street, there's just 4-wheel vehicles, assuming you're driving on the street. Okay, so we'll make a 4-wheel vehicle. So we do that. But that was a mistake, actually. And we corrected it with a 3-wheel vehicle eventually. At least in our opinion, it was a mistake. And so just to dive a little deeper into this particular point, I think it's interesting. So why do all cars have 4 wheels when they could just have 3? Right? You could have 2 wheels in the front, for example, to do steering, and 1 wheel in the back to do drive, just power you. So you have traction control, you have safety, all these things. And you realize that the challenge that people were designing for when they were building cars for people is actually a different challenge, or there's a different set of requirements than if you were moving around a set of plates. Okay. Because you don't have to worry about safety for the internal item, right? It's a reverse problem. The heavier the car is, the more safety things it has, kind of the more dangerous it is for pedestrians and other cars, right? So if you don't have a person inside, why not make the vehicle super lightweight? And that's the focus. And if you're only going to go on, kind of local roads and not the highway, well, we can have slower speed. So we don't care about traction as much. And if you're not going to have people who are not going to make mistakes as much, and you're going to drive with a computer, you could probably get away with 3 wheels. And in fact, there are some cars, quote unquote, that are 3 wheels and they're much more efficient. And if you're going electric, guess what? There's something called a hub motor and it doesn't have a transmission. And it's great. And then you kind of, this happened because we built a 4-wheel vehicle. We call it the quad. It was super heavy. It was, a couple hundred pounds, on the order of 800 pounds. It was ginormous from our perspective, or smaller than a car, but heavy duty metal kind of thing. And a lot of stuff broke. Okay. We even got it developed by an outside kind of group of people that helped us, but still a lot of stuff broke. And what we realized was, hey, less parts is better. The best part is no part, right? Because it can't break. And so, anyway, the kind of key takeaway was I said, I just got upset. I just, kind of blew up at the team and I go, guys, why can't this be 2 bicycles pushed together? Like, why is it so heavy? Right? Because you have all these problems, right? When it's heavy, you have to ship it and whatever, all these kind of problems lead to more problems. Anyway, then we kind of went back to the drawing board, chopped off tons of weight and got it down to 3 wheels and all that. So what we learned, like, that's a key takeaway, but we also learned things like weather is really hard. Asynchronous problem is really hard. People dying is really bad. Okay, that sounds like an obvious statement, but I'll dive into that for a second. What it means is there's regulations in self-driving, which slows down. It's really hard for startups. And the reason there's regulations is because people could get hurt. And so that's maybe a good thing for self-driving, but it's really hard for startups to get around regulations, right? Because you're doing something new, regulations are kind of slow. So for example, if you're making a vehicle that has no people, but it still has to have a seatbelt, it's like, wait, but there's we don't have a seat. So how can we, right? And all these kind of problems. So, so you go to talk to regulators, but they're slow and you're dying as a startup. You got to get to market. So what we realize is we want to kind of take all those problems and move to a market, or let's say a business model where there's not going to have those issues or less of them. And so we want to be indoors, not outdoors. We want to be slow moving. So we can't, just practically speaking, we're not going to hurt people. No regulations or very little regulations. Still a huge market, still a really big need, and still something that's going to move us towards that Boston Dynamics future, but removing those problems. And so a bathroom is a special place because everything's bolted down to the floor. You can do slow moving. You can get away with 99%. So imagine you were driving and every 100 minutes you made a really serious mistake. That's 99% you were great. 99% of the turns you make are great, but 1% you make a mistake. That's really bad driving, right? And so it's a hard challenge. Anyway, those are the kinds of things that we learned that helped us move towards bathroom cleaning.
Yeah, I'm from Miami. I do know a lot about bad driving. Definitely. I think Justin Bieber got pulled over in front of my school. He was going like 105 miles an hour in like a 15-mile-an-hour zone. Just goes to show you what type of people that we have down in South Florida.
I'm a big fan of Florida, FYI. Yeah. But I can say, like, on our side, there's a reason why you have regulations for safety, and I'm definitely pro that. We want to live in a safe place. But when you're doing startups, they're tough. They really can be tough. And so that's always a good balance to kind of figure out how to navigate.
Yeah, and not just startups. I mean, if you look at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he had they're not self-driving cars, but they're self-flying drones that deliver packages within 30 minutes. So you have literally a company, probably unlimited resources, the most powerful man in the world. He knows every politician there ever was, and he still has very, very hard time getting, allowed to do that. So especially a startup, you can be extremely powerful and everything. Still, it's unbelievably difficult, especially when you have to deal with regulators and everything like that. It takes them 25 minutes to figure out what type of shirt they're going to wear in the morning,
Well, I think the mindset's a bit different. So, while I definitely can appreciate, in some cases, there's people in startups who make boneheaded mistakes and there's regulators that make boneheaded mistakes. And that's, I think, true of every industry. The thing about regulators that I come to respect on some level, even though, yes, I mean, I'm like the entrepreneur side. I want to kind of freedom. I'm super pro all that. On the other side, when I've met some of them and they're trying to do good, right? And I fully kind of appreciate that effort. And there's a balance. And so, when you're building something and you're trying to get it to to millions of people and you want to kind of put it out there and in the real world society, it's hard. And you have to balance. You can't just skirt regulations. You have to kind of work within the framework. On the other side, you got to find the little crack where you have room to grow and you're not going to get stifled by, kind of the like you said, the guy who can't figure out what color shirt they're going to put on. There are some, kind of places where you can thrive and they're free and they're open and you can kind of work there. And that's why I think partially why the internet is, been booming the last couple of years. It's just like it's the Wild West. There's some level of freedom there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so you mentioned like how you actually got into the idea of starting Somatic. How did you actually start it? Did you have to go raise funds? How exactly did this all kind of go about?
Yeah, so we were fortunate that we kind of had that previous, kind of history. So we were able to kind of get that started without, it wasn't as brutal, let's say, as kind of the first startup. And that wasn't even the first startup. That was kind of the I don't even know what iteration Chalkable was as far as the number
You
of
had
startups.
25 startups before that.
Well, I know about 25, but I can tell you they certainly weren't notable from the, from anyone's perspective. But I certainly failed a lot, and I'm sure that'll keep happening. But really what it came down to was coming together with Eugene, my co-founder, and sitting down and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, and deciding. And that's, I think, the first step for building something like this is like, there's a lot of practical things you have to do. Like you just said, you got to get money, you have to make a company, you have to kind of get a team together, all that good stuff. But I think the main thing is just deciding that you're going to spend, a good number of years on this, right? Not a year, not 2 years. It's going to be, if it's successful, it's going to take, nearly a decade at least. I think that's something like the average. And hopefully longer. And so, yeah, you just have to decide, this is what I'm going to do. And that was just a series of conversations. We sat down, we said, look, this is the future. We're sure this is going to happen. Do we think we could do this? Are we the ones that are going to add value? We can make this happen faster if we do it, and better, we think. And let's get to it.
Yeah, it was actually very interesting that you were mentioning about the tri-wheel. When I saw some of your videos about the actual product, it has 4 wheels. What went into that process about actually making the product?
Well, okay, so I was referring to kind of the self-driving delivery that had 3 wheels.
Right.
The current project, SOMATIC. So first of all, just to kind of let anyone who might be listening know, so SOMATIC is a company that builds bathroom cleaning robots, right? So for office buildings. And so the idea is any commercial space, we just like to say office buildings as kind of like a easy to remember concept. But the idea is that if you have a commercial bathroom, it's going to get cleaned on some regular basis, right? And so there's this technology where you can, or let's say a cleaning method, which you can use, which is you're going to spray chemicals and that's going to disinfect. Then you're going to power wash with fresh water, and then you're going to vacuum dry, right? And there's a third and a half step we call it, which is blow drying. But basically the idea is you're going to spray chemicals, disinfect, power wash with fresh water, and then vacuum dry. Okay, can we get a robot to kind of do that? Right? Or to do most of what the human's doing in the bathroom. And then can we get that robot to do that reliably every day, all the time, right? And kind of make the cleaning team be more efficient, and they could focus on the other areas that humans are great at, and kind of free them up. And so overall, you'll make the cleaning team more efficient by introducing a robot into the mix. That's our mission statement. That's what we're doing right now. And we're taking steps towards that. And if you look at our YouTube channel, I think that's what you're referring to. That's kind of you can see the iteration over time. As far as the robot design itself, we use kind of a 4-wheel design that you're talking about. The idea there is that we want to be able to move in any direction. So we have special wheels, they're called mechanism, and they help us move in any direction. They're called omnidirectional, right? Where you can move forward, backward, right, left, but also diagonal. And that's really, really useful for kind of simplifying the self-driving, if you will, challenge. Now, it is similar in some ways to self-driving in the street, but it's actually quite different in implementation. So, both called self-driving, but one of them, it's maybe like riding a bicycle versus riding a motorcycle. They might look a little similar, but they're actually quite different.
Yeah. So I actually, many people might not know this, but I've actually cleaned a bathroom in a hotel. I actually do know what goes in to actually cleaning a bathroom. And I believe you also, your parents and grandparents actually ran a restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants growing up in New York. I absolutely loved it. And you mentioned that growing up, you used to clean their bathroom also, no?
Yeah, so I love that story. So my grandparents had a restaurant for many years. I kind of grew up in and around the restaurant, and so the kind of how the idea, like you have to have some kind of connection, let's say, to the market, right? So how do you even, maybe everyone's familiar with bathrooms, but are you really familiar with what's going into cleaning it? And so if you actually seen, kind of the back end of what's happening there, like you said in the hotel, okay, what does it take to clean a commercial space, right? So in a restaurant, I'd say it's a little different than a hotel, but it's not too different, right? It's still a commercial space, and definitely if you do something like a lobby, it's going to be very similar, right? And so if you know that process, as you said you do, and I certainly do, you can kind of understand that this is a job that's very necessary, and there's, it's definitely an honest day's work. But in 100 years from now, my kids, I would hope that society kind of moves past it, right? And we can kind of free up people to do more enjoyable things. And so, yeah, that's kind of like let's say it's an added bonus to me. That's like a feel good thing, right? Ultimately, this is a net positive, and that definitely, because if you said to me that's going to be your job, I would say, okay, if I was on an island and this is what I had to do, I had to climb trees and get coconuts every day. I don't know about you, but one of the things I'd be thinking about all the time is, can I build something to make this a little easier for me? And that's exactly what, so if you have that in your background, in your childhood or something like that, or in your early days of your career, I think it's super valuable. So from your perspective, I know that kind of your background, you kind of know a bunch of different jobs in the commercial real estate space. And that gives you an added value if you're doing investing, if you're kind of looking for a job, if you're interviewing people in many, many areas. And so I think that's kind of invaluable. Growing up at, in and around a family business, you see a lot of different aspects of it. And it's certainly influenced, us going into commercial cleaning.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you are an entrepreneur with a capital E. There's no question about it. So going back to my experience with the bathrooms. So here's what was actually going on. So I'm referring to, this was a fairly large hotel, it was a full service hotel. There was both a woman who cleaned the woman's bathroom. There was a guy who cleaned the guy's bathroom. What ended up happening was that the woman was excellent. She used to clean the woman's bathroom fine. The guy was probably stealing more food than he was cleaning bathrooms. Okay. So at the end of the day, the men's bathroom wasn't actually being cleaned. And this is not a dumpy hotel. This is a hotel where higher end people are actually going there. They walk into that hotel, they look at the lobby bathroom, and it's a piece of garbage. That reflects horribly on the hotel. I could definitely see this being a real solution, not just to make it easier on people, but you always run into, even on the back end, you're going to run into people that just don't do their job. Why don't you tell us more about, also, why don't we get into the numbers more about, because right now.
Can I just get a bit more color on your story? Because I actually was curious about that. I heard you mention that in another video, and I was so curious. So what was your kind of role? So give me a background. How did you get that job? And then what was your role? And then how did you end up cleaning there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was actually on summer break. I was going for my MBA. And so I was in a town called Long Branch, New Jersey. And so it's right next to Deal. I just kind of got bored. And there were two things I really wanted to do in my life. One was to be a waiter, and the other one was to work in a hotel. I've never had the opportunity to do those things. So I was once passing by, I was at a doctor's office or something, and on the drive back, I kept passing, this hotel. Let's just keep the name to be.
Sure.
Let's have it. I won't say the name, but there was a sign outside that just said, "We're hiring." So I brought that, I walked in literally cold. I have no problem doing that. And I'm like, I saw there's a sign outside as you're hiring. Oh, you know the story? And so they asked me.
I love it though.
Oh, so I walked in, I asked the guy behind the counter, I'm like, it says you guys are hiring. Are you still hiring? He's like, yes. What job are you looking? What are you looking for? I'm like, whatever pays the most, And so he told me, yeah. And so I told him that I was only going to be here for a month. So originally they wanted to put me in like an office or whatever it is. And I'm like, fine, but they wouldn't do it because I was only there for a month. They said, we'll start you in the janitorial space or whatever. And so I'm like, listen, it's not ideal, but like, I really do want to learn how this works. Eventually, I think this is going to benefit me one way, shape, form, or another. I can't believe how much it actually has that I'm talking to Mr. Bathroom Cleaner, whatever it is. And I actually understand it because I've actually done it. But that's actually how it worked. And I not only learned how to clean a bathroom, I actually vacuumed the entire hotel, and I blew out my back actually. And I actually learned from there how inefficient this system really is, and how they were using old school vacuums. I'm talking like 1980s
I think another thing that you pick up that maybe is kind of subtle, but I think it's super helpful, is like how a business like that runs. So for example, I'm sure there was some kind of clock-in system, right, where they were tracking hours. There's kind of a employee changing room or something like that. You kind of see how the employees interact with each other, how they interact with the manager. You kind of understand, okay, shifts, hours, how they deal with that. Maybe even some level of promotions or some politics. There's so many aspects to it that it's like it's a crash course. You're not going to learn anything of any of those kind of things that we just saw in a university environment, certainly not in a high school environment. And boom, in 1 month you just got a crash course, and now you're going to go on and do another job, even as a manager, as any other, even if you became an author, a writer, whatever. You just have that background, and it's, I think, super valuable.
Yeah, no,
Super
100%. I honestly feel like I can just go into that hotel. There's so many different aspects that was so easy.
And the sales side, by the way, just to cut you off, you're that just like you walked in, you didn't even think of that. You just, as like a big deal. You walked in, you're like, oh, hi, I would like a job. That's already a difficult thing to do. That's how hard is that to talk to a stranger and do some sales in what we do all the time, whether it's an investor or whether it's a customer. That self-confidence to just call them up. I mean, you get rejected a lot. It happens. That's to every person doing sales or any kind of outreach. I think it's just, super valuable.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, pretty much been in sales my entire whole career. Appreciate it. Yeah, started businesses before, failed at those, but learned from them. I try to do literally as many things as possible. I'm like a mini version of you. Try to literally just do as many businesses as possible. I know I'm super flattery. I get it.
I don't know about mini. I don't know about mini, but yeah.
I am a big guy. I do eat a lot, but yeah, I understand. Yeah, you were literally brought up in one of my favorite restaurants. How are you even in good shape at all? Like I would have eaten 15 burgers a day. Just got all the free food I wanted. You serve burgers and fries, and like
there was a lot of burgers and fries and chicken nuggets. My favorite was chicken nuggets. If you are what you eat, chicken nuggets. Can't go wrong.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. That was a great point that you mentioned over there. So yeah. So let's get back into what was I actually mentioning before we went on that. I was mentioning about how to clean, how the process actually works for cleaning the bathroom.
Yeah. I can kind of walk through kind of how the robot works a bit and the numbers I think you were asking about. So there's first high level, there's 800 and, let's say 869 some odd thousand people whose job it is every single day to keep commercial buildings kind of clean and safe. And what we say is it's our job to make those teams more efficient. And so what that means is we go in and, I kind of walk through the basic idea of what the robot does. But part of what we do is open doors, take the elevator, right? Recharge chemicals, recharge electricity, spill out the dirty water. And that aspect of it is the autonomous aspect of it. So, the way the robot works is the first step is scanning. So we take the scan of the environment. And so the way we do that is we kind of give our customers a scanner. We just mail it to them and they walk around the space with that. That captures, if you're familiar with LiDAR, it's like what Google self-driving cars have on top, that thing that spins around. Similar kind of sensor, but much smaller. And we call it the shoebox. It's got an on button and a go button. Turn it on, press go. And if you take a video on your phone, you can use this thing. You just walk around, you take a scan. Once you capture that, we upload it to the cloud and we check it manually. We see it. Did you do a good capture? And by the way, they added that LiDAR technology now, a much scaled down version of it, but to the iPhone and iPad. So you can just see like there's a huge investment that's being done in the market and improvement on LiDAR. So, kind of growing by leaps and bounds all the time. And then that's just another set of technology that we did not invent and that we're kind of building off of, which is, an enabler for us. In any event, we get this scan and now we kind of have a 3D map or like a game version of your building. Okay. And then what we do is kind of a bit dystopian. We put on VR headset and controllers. And in our office remotely, we clean your bathroom one time. So we say it's like the worst video game ever. You put on a controller and then you literally are going to go clean a bathroom. And what we're really doing, though, is we're actually programming the robot. Okay, so when the person goes like this, the robot's going to go like that. So you're like virtually holding a sprayer and you're spraying and then the robot's going to do it. That's a bit of not exactly true. It's a bit different of a process, but it's very similar to, that if you understand that, that's basically what we're doing. A bit more complicated. And the reason it's a bit more complicated is because the robot arm doesn't work in the same way that your arm works. So your arm kind of has a huge amount of flexibility and degrees of freedom, it's called. And our robot arm doesn't quite have that level. And so there's some other constraints. And so it's not exactly one-to-one, just like your spraying, but it's similar enough. Okay, so now that we have this pre-programmed version of the cleaning, another thing that we do, by the way, to cheat, to make our jobs easier, because we're trying to cheat as much as possible, is, and I kind of touched on this before, is that the bathrooms are a special place. So here's an example of that. All the toilets are bolted down, so that means they're in the exact same spot every time. Well, what about the toilet seat? Because it moves, right? But it moves in a predictable way. So it's hinged, right? Same thing as stall doors. They move, but they move in predictable ways. And so we add that to our map, and that helps our robot kind of interact with the world. It still can be in any position, right? In this kind of range, but it's not any position, period, right? And we know it's going to be in one of those positions. And so it makes the AI problem, if you will, much easier, or the computer vision problem easier. And so we call that like bite-sized AI problems. And that's kind of the way that we think it's going to be able to kind of progress faster. So it's not this end-to-end neural network where you just walk into the bathroom and the robot knows what to do. It's kind of much more bite-sized challenges. In any event, now you have this map. You annotated it with those moving things. You have the programming, right, which we said, and now you're ready to download that to the robot, and then the robot can go and clean. The robot then has to be able to get in and out of the bathroom, and then up and down floors, right? Because ultimately you need this thing to be able to be somewhat autonomous, because otherwise it's going to kind of bother the team, and there's too much work, and so customers don't like it. And so what we saw was, to make an effective product, what we need is something that's going to allow our customers to kind of interact with it pretty lightly. Okay, so it has to be fairly autonomous, not fully autonomous, but fairly autonomous. And so that's kind of the product roadmap. And we went ahead and started kind of building on that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, it's not fully autonomous.
I lost you again.
I don't know what's going on.
Is that me?
I'm not muted. How about now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what happened. I don't know. I just clicked mute.
It might be my side. Who knows?
I don't know. It's usually always me, but whatever. Anyways, so you mentioned, so getting back to it, you mentioned that it's not fully autonomous. Obviously, it's kind of halfway autonomous. So you do need a guy there. So essentially, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, not with the robot. We say that we integrate into a cleaning team. So as far as the level of autonomy goes, the idea is that the robot can operate by itself. It
Right.
recharges itself and refills itself with chemicals and all that. But the idea is that if it gets stuck or it has some problem, it can call on somebody to come go help it. But generally speaking, it's operating by itself.
Right. So essentially, you would have someone from the team bring it into the bathroom. They don't bring it into the bathroom.
Yeah, no, it drives by itself. It can open doors and take the elevator by itself.
Oh, very cool. So so essentially, it can clean the bathroom on its own. What else? And then it goes charge, and then it just charges itself. What else does the person need to be there for? What does he need to actually do?
There's no requirement to have a person watching the robot at all times. That's certainly not the business. The idea is that there's kind of, let's say, somebody who's kind of in charge of the robot, let's say, or on duty, right? And so the idea is that if the robot encounters some problem or something unexpected happens, that person will then come and go assist the robot, right? We don't expect that to happen, but that's the idea, is that it's kind of so let's say there is self-driving cars today, right? They're operating and fully without people, even in the case of in Arizona, right? But why don't you see them everywhere? And so it's just about the level of reliability, right? And so part of our business is the idea that we can kind of put these robots out, and because of the environment, because of the slow speed, et cetera, the idea is that you can get to market with a lower level of reliability than something like a self-driving car, and so therefore we can produce that faster to market.
Right.
Over time, that level of reliability and capability goes up. And so the interactions from our customers go down, which is great because it just takes up less of their time.
Right.
And the way we start, by the way, testing is we put our robot handler, like a person from our team, just babysits the robot, right? And so that's the stage that we're in right now. It still requires a person to babysit the robot. But every week, every day, every month, right, we're just kind of decreasing the amount of interactions that person, that robot handler has with the robot, until the point where we're comfortable to remove them and they can just be remote. Then we reduce that even further. Now they're just not even remote. There's just a local person that can manage it.
Right. And so one of the only things that it probably can't do is when a toilet, unfortunately it happens, gets clogged, which does happen a lot, especially in a hotel. So will the machine actually alert somebody like, hey, there's a problem, you got to come check this out?
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's kind of different classes. So, I mean, we get really into the nitty gritty, but basic idea. there's a lot of different kinds of problems that could happen, right? There's even, for example, just paper on the floor. Is that a piece of tissue? Is that a hand towel? Because you might pick it up differently. What's the size? Is it wet? Is it dry? As a human, you kind of just instantly see it and you pick it up. Maybe you're going to sweep it if it's dry. Maybe it's wet. You're going to use a glove and pick it up. All kinds of things. You might take another paper towel and wipe up a bunch of them. So there are all kinds of strategies that you're going to use. You're not even thinking of them as strategies. You're just like naturally doing that. With the robot, it's a bit different. Now, specifically, we're talking about, let's say, like a stuffed toilet or something like that. What we say is with any kind of challenge or let's say situation that the robot can handle, the idea is that at least the robot should be able to identify that there's a problem that it's not handling. For example, I was in a casino and I believe it was the general manager of the casino of the cleaning team told me that a player had lost, a guest had lost pretty badly, I guess, and went into the men's room and proceeded to break off all of the urinal dividers, just rip them off the wall. And so in a case like that, right, which is rare, but can happen, obviously, the robot should just identify that in this section, in this area of the bathroom, okay, there's a problem. I might not be familiar with that problem, but it looks different than how it looked yesterday when it was clean, and it's kind of different enough to the level where I don't understand what this environment is now. I'm going to send a picture, let the kind of the person who's on duty who's going to take care of the robot come and fix it. And then they'll let me know, okay, area is ready to be cleaned or skip it for the day. And we do, it's obviously a much lower level situation, but with a stuffed toilet, if the robot can't manage that, it's going to take a picture, send it to the person clears it. And then the robot can go back in and clean that section or skip it for the day.
That's actually fantastic that you said that it actually will take a picture. I also find it hilarious that it will take a picture of a stuffed toilet and send it to somebody. So that's also great too.
We will have, I think, even if we don't have it yet, I have a strong confidence that we will soon have the world's largest database of that kind of information, because I don't think anyone else is really collecting it. But I will point out, I think that kind of brings me to an interesting point, which is privacy, which is kind of like a huge area. It's actually privacy and safety, maybe. So we take that super seriously, and we also kind of focus on that because we understand that this is new, and we want people to be very comfortable with what we're doing. And so it's not as if this robot is, generally speaking, it's working in the evenings where there's not people. But in any case, if a person enters the bathroom, immediately we're not taking video or pictures of that person, and we have all kinds of subsystems to kind of protect against that. And then practically speaking, it's very obvious where the robot's camera is and when it's active and when it's not. So we're kind of very sensitive to that topic, and we're very aware of that topic, and we want to make sure that we work with kind of all the stakeholders, including the general population of the buildings, to make sure that everyone's super comfortable. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to keep the building clean and safe, and so that's kind of our mission statement.
Right. I had the assumption though that when the machine is actually active, that they would close off the bathroom because it's kind of spraying cleaning solution all over the place. Like, people can't be in there, right?
Sure. So the way that's kind of takes us into the safety kind of discussion. So it's not well, the most dangerous part of our industry is slip and fall. Okay. And so when a human, we try to model everything on kind of what's done today, right, with humans. And so when a human being, when a person's cleaning a bathroom, what they do, they put up that yellow sign, right? The triangle, the good old triangle. What we're going to do is something slightly different than the triangle. Our approach is double-sided yellow sign. Okay, great. Just easier for the robot to manage. But the idea is the same. The bathroom is closed for cleaning. Okay, great. But what if a person enters? Right. So what does the human do? Human might turn around and say something. Hey, this bathroom's being cleaned. Please exit. mind the wet floors, if they're polite, right? That's what the robot will do. So when a person enters, the robot stop cleaning and just let them know with a speaker, hey, this bathroom's being cleaned. Please exit, mind the wet floors. If the person doesn't listen, right? Fantastic. If they don't listen, well, they might use the bathroom. You sometimes it's an emergency, you got to go. That's fine as well. And then, we're going to do everything we can to make it as safe as possible, meaning the robot's going to stop cleaning and wait for them to exit, which is basically what the person does.
Right. Because I assume a lot of your, clientele would probably ask about that because they technically are the ones who are liable. They're going to ask you about that. And it seems like you have the right kind of procedure in place. I mean, it can't be any clearer. You put a sign there, and it also has a speaker saying, please exit, we are cleaning, so on and so forth.
So on the way we think about it is, again, this is not a new problem, right? So people deal with this, for, I don't know, thousands of years. Certainly they're dealing with this today. And the idea is, we're just modeling that, right? So we're trying to get it as close as we can, or even better in many cases, to what a person is doing. So because we use the that vacuuming technique, right, the spray and vacuum, the bathrooms are actually back to service right away, or much faster than if you mopped, for example. And that's something that's being done today as well. People use that cleaning method. That's one of the benefits of the method, is that it's dried relatively quickly, and therefore when a person comes in, even after the robot leaves, it's already dry. So the reduction of slip and fall, we think, is significant, proven by the fact that it's been done in the industry for decades.
That's an absolutely fantastic point that you just made, that you dry it immediately. When we were cleaning the bathrooms, right, in the hotels, we would use a mop and it would still be wet for a half hour. The thing is wet. And so someone would walk in there and God forbid somebody slips. Yeah, 100%.
And well, there's the slip and fall, and then also in the high volume, kind of high traffic areas like in an airport, that just it lowers the quality of kind of the customer experience, because they have to walk further to another bathroom that's open. And so we guest experience in a hotel, anything like that, in kind of a gaming situation, in a hospital, right? So there's all these places where you have high volume, and we kind of want to support customers any way we can.
Yeah, that's great. So why don't we walk into, so if let's say if I own a office building, I want your product, I want your service. How do I go about doing that? How much does it cost, et cetera?
Yeah. So our models, okay. So we tried to base our model on kind of how the way we think that customers are going to kind of, if I was a customer, let's say, what would I want? Okay, that's the way I thought about it. And so, and then I guess the first step, I think, is like, okay, what am I doing today? Right. So if I have a need that I need to clean my bathrooms in my building, I can hire a company, and that company is actually our customer, right? So the cleaning companies are our customer. So when we're thinking about this challenge, we should think about the customer as the cleaning company. What do they do today? They hire somebody. Okay. Then they pay them every 2 weeks, whatnot. Okay. So we do kind of a very similar setup to what they do today, right? Because they're very comfortable with that, and that's what they're built around. Okay, so there's no huge upfront cost to buy the machine, and then you have to have all this risk. Oh, what if I don't like it? What if it does? With us, you can try it out. There's even a free trial period, right? Like depending on the particular customer, it might be something like 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks period, what we say, don't change anything. Have the people clean at 10 o'clock, use us at 8 o'clock, right? And if they come in and there's nothing to do, fantastic. At the end of the 2 weeks, start paying us, right? If you don't like it, we'll take it out. And there's no hidden fees, there's no delivery fee, there's nothing like that. So give it a try. At the end of that period, you start using it. So you're paying us by the usage, just like you have a person and they're doing a shift, right? That might be like 9 to 5 or whatever hours you're doing in your particular situation. But it's something like 40 hours a week is a classic shift, right? We do the same thing. And that's $1,000 a month, roughly, right? So it's 40 hours a week, $1,000. That's the way you should think about it. And what that gives you is 8 hours a day of cleaning. The robot can do 2 of those per day, and it can get a third one on the weekends, right? So the idea is that if you think about it, you're paying anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a month, and you're getting this robot to clean your commercial space. It's very straightforward. And then the idea, what we want to do is we want to do a long-term agreement with you, right? And the reason for that is that we have to pay for this robot up front. I told you I'm not charging you anything up front for that robot. And so we want to do a long-term agreement with you. And so after you're comfortable, that might be 30 days, that might be 60 days, that might be 90 days. But when you're comfortable as a customer and you think, okay, this thing's great, I love it, I'm going to keep it, this is great, let's sign a long-term agreement and we can get things squared away. And if you don't, you want to stay month to month, there's a charge for that on our side. And so we increase the price, right? But you can just, anytime you can sign a long-term contract, or you can keep going a few more months if you need that extra stability. But on our side, the reason we need that, it's not that we want to lock you into a long-term contract. It's that we have to get the money to pay for these robots to grow our company. And so we have to borrow that money from a lender. And so what we need to do is match our inflows with our outflows. And so one extra idea there is, if we have these long-term contracts, our lenders are then very comfortable to loan us the money. But what if you lose your contract with a building, right? You might say something like, okay, great, I get why you need the long-term contract. You're trying to lock me in. But now you have this long-term contract with me and I lose my contract with a building. So what do? I have your machine, I can't use it. Okay, great. We'll cancel the contract in that case. So we try to align ourselves with the customer. And the reason, by the way, we're able to do that is because we're already in the building. It's already mapped out. We're already cleaning. And likely the next cleaning company that's going to come in is going to use us, right? At least we get a really good shot at them. And it's a super low cost for us to try it out. It's already in the building. It's already working. And so that's kind of our approach. Bit of a mouthful, but the basic idea is if I sum it up, I would say something like we save customers 50% on the labor. So if you're paying right now $12 and change an hour to clean bathrooms, not all in cost, I'm talking labor cost, we're 50% cheaper.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, in New York, I think the minimum wage is $15 an hour. So it's
Right.
even
So
more. That's even more of a
our
And
goal is going to be continuously, like, I think the sales pitch is very straightforward. It's 50% savings.
right. And also, you don't have to deal with a guy that, I was working with who essentially is extremely unreliable on coming to shift on time and actually cleaning a bathroom. This is very straightforward and actually gets the job done consistently. And you don't have to deal with attitudes, unless, of course, you kind of plant that in there just to have some fun. But yeah.
I don't think we're gonna put in, kind of the robot giving you back talk, but I think that the real kind of cool value that we unlock is there's a lot of turnover in the industry, which is really a big cost for our customers. But what's cool is that there's this other percentage of the workers in the industry that don't turn over, that are long term, and they're fantastic, and they get all these extra kind of knowledge about the building, all these things. And those are the workers that you want to kind of pay more, right? And you want to keep them, and you want to let them grow. So ultimately, if you want to pay people more money, okay, then even more money than the $15, you got to make them more productive. So how do you make them more productive? Okay, well, you give them a tool to make them more efficient at their job. So think about it this way. Let's say there's a janitor who's cleaning a tall building and they're part of a team, and there's 20 other janitors in the building. Great. Well, what if I gave, and if some of them are high turnover, and there's, one particular woman, she's great, she's fantastic, she's been there 20 years, or there's a guy and he's kind of super dedicated, always smiling, always doing a great job, right? Going that extra mile, right? Okay, great. Let's empower those people. Let's pay them more, and let's give them a tool that does the worst part of their job, and let them focus on the things that kind of add a lot of value. And so, are we going to lower the number of people in the industry? Absolutely. That's what technology does. And I don't like to kind of, dance around that topic. Am I uncomfortable with that? Absolutely not. Like, that's what technology does. And you got to face it head on, right? It will reduce the number of people in that industry, but the amazing thing that it's going to do, and the power and the positive, is going to be, it's going to get the workers paid more. It's going to get our customers, the companies, to make more money, which everyone loves, and we're going to be able to make a living and feed our families as well, right? And so at the end of the day, it's a win-win-win. How is that possible? 2 thumbs up for technology, right? Because that's America. That's what we want to do. We want to wake up in the morning, we want to build cool things and make life better. It is a win-win-win, but it will reduce employment in that industry over time. That is a fact.
That's a fantastic point, and it's actually going to be it was actually something I was gonna make a video about it in the future, a short video about my experience in that hotel bathroom or whatever, with that one fantastic worker and the other one who's a complete schlump. I'm like, you're paying both of them, let's say $10 an hour, right? So it's $20 an hour essentially. You're only getting $10 an hour in production. Why not get rid of that guy? Just pay her a little bit more, but again, then she has to clean 2 bathrooms. It's a lot to do. Keep the good one, right? Get rid of the people that don't do anything. And it seems like that's exactly what you guys are doing anyway. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to empower our customers and their employees. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you were on Y Combinator. For those of you who do not know what Y Combinator is, if you are on there, you're about as legitimate as you're going to find. You do not get on there unless you are the most ridiculous startup that there is. I believe Airbnb was on there. I think it was before Google's days, but I'm pretty sure Google would be on there also. But essentially, like, the biggest and the baddest startups were on there. You were on there. So that's unbelievable. What was your experience like on Y Combinator?
Well, I have a bunch of experience with incubators or accelerators. I did 500 startups for Chocobo. For SOMATIC, we did actually Hacks and YC, Y Combinator. And I have so much positive feelings towards that institution. I can't, Y Combinator specifically, but Hacks, 500 startups, all these programs help me. I can't overstate actually how much these programs help. So YC particularly, if you're asking about YC, they're a phenomenal group of people. What they want to do is they want to help you build a big business, and they're so aligned with the founders. So they're just like, hey, no BS. Like, this is what you want to do, You're going to have 3 months to go do it. Okay. It's like once you're in, the process for applying and getting in and all that is really interesting, and kind of definitely a whirlwind of emotions. You have this like 10-minute interview, and then like they fly you out. If you're in or not, you find out that day. It's a crazy roller coaster ride of that whole kind of getting in process. But once you're in, and like you said, you just feel that you get there, you're like, okay, Airbnb, Dropbox, Stripe, you came out of this program, like, okay, there's some serious, something's going on here. Okay,
There's some real people here.
and you're just like, you're looking around, and you're like, these people are like crazy smart and hungry and just good and have great experience and all that backgrounds, and you're just like, why am I here? Like that was my that was my feeling. And but I can say, like, all jokes aside, I enjoyed the experience. It was the network is amazing. The people are great, and their big thing is go do it. Like, this is going to be highly leveraged time of your life, meaning to say, just try to tune out everything else that's going to be distraction, and get to building something that people want, right? Very, very focused. They kind of wipe away a lot of the nonsense and just laser focused. And the network is unbelievable. The network of investors that we found through them, network of friends, just, yeah. I can't if you're starting a startup, Hacks, 500 startups, Y Combinator, I cannot, I cannot say enough good things about these programs. Apply today.
The reason why I mentioned Y Combinator is because I'm a little bit more familiar with Y Combinator than it is Hacks. So yeah, it sounds like you had a great experience. Was there anybody particularly there that you seem to be very influenced by, or like, holy hell, I'm talking to this guy?
Holy hell, I'm talking to this guy. I would say something like, I knew a lot of the kind of the partners' backgrounds before. So that was definitely cool. To kind of speak to people who, he started this company, or she started that company.
Right.
But I would say, overall, we were super focused on building our thing, right? And so it was an intense time. There was a, like, you brought up that story where you went to the hotel and kind of just walked in, and there was a day where I was doing cold calling. I just remember, like, a couple of days actually, and one of the particular people that we were cold calling, it was a janitorial company. He had his cell phone number on his voicemail, so he didn't pick up, but he had it. He had, like, for emergencies, call this number. So I just texted it. He responded. Later, I found out that he thought I was someone else. Okay. But eventually, I just, like, okay, he stopped responding when he realized who it was, and we were going back and forth. And I just showed up, or he didn't respond fast enough. Maybe he would have responded, but I was like, okay, like, I was trying to kind of we had this partners meeting on Thursday, and I wanted to get that, or Friday, and I wanted to get that, I wanted to have something signed. And so the next day, and this is an example of, like, that there's going to be somebody there saying, like, why didn't you go get a signed contract? Like, why not? And so I just showed up at the guy's business the next day. And he's like, what? Oh, you're the guy from that. And we spoke, and it's that kind of attitude that I love. And yeah, so I couldn't say more positive things about those guys.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could be, especially if you're starting a company, you have more experience than probably most founders, because most founders are probably starting for the first time. You've already started the business already. You kind of already knew how to speak to investors. Was there any, like, words of advice on how to, let's say, a head investor from Sequoia Capital is there? Like, is there any, because these guys are about as blunt as you're going to find probably. They want answers, like, in, like, 30 seconds or less. Is there any piece of advice you would give a fresh entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's tons. But, like, if I had to boil it down, in the case where you were just talking about you're meeting with an investor, something like that, the best thing you can do is have sales. Below that, you can have users or something like that, like maybe an LOI if you're in the hardware space or something like that. Below that, you can have, like, a product that you can try. So it's not so much there definitely matters what you say, for sure, no question. But my first piece of advice would be, like, try to get sales, try to get a contract, try to get something because that even if you say the wrong thing, you could still get what you're trying to accomplish done with that. Okay. But let's say you have that, or you don't have that, whatever, you want to know what you should say. Say what you do in a sentence that one sentence. We make bathroom cleaning robots for office buildings. Now, I could say we make cleaning robotics company, blah, blah, for commercial spaces, even just using the phrase commercial spaces versus bathroom cleaning robots for office buildings. Like, why am I saying office buildings versus commercial spaces? It's just easier to remember. So the key takeaway after that investor talked to you is, if they were going home and they were going to talk to their significant other over dinner, could they say what you said? Or first of all, could they remember what you said? Okay. And second, so say something that's memorable, because if you're forgotten, that doesn't matter what you said. So try to make it, but how do you make it memorable? Maybe it's provocative, maybe it's short, it's sweet, it's easy. It should definitely be all of those things, and just try to make it something that if you were talking to your mom or dad, you wouldn't say, like, you wouldn't use business jargon, right? You would just say, we make an app that does this, or we make a website or a service that does that. Just something very blunt. If you want to use an analogy, we're the Uber for this. Sometimes that works, sometimes not. But like short and sweet, that's like, I would say, a key thing when you're talking to investors. And you'd be shocked people don't do that, like, at all.
Oh, I'm not shocked. Yeah, no, I see it all the time. It's crazy. Yeah, I think one of the great things about what you do is that it's so unique. You know, like if someone's just creating an app, a million people try creating apps. Most of them are garbage. You're gonna have the occasional Instagram and stuff like that. But like, I create a robot cleaning. I can't say it. Robot. You essentially create a robot that cleans commercial bathrooms. What? Tell me more. You know what the hell did you just say?
Oh, and I would say practice, by the way. That's another thing. I'm not embarrassed to say that you stand in front of the mirror, you just stand in your bedroom, whatever, close the door, open it, whatever you want, whatever, get to the state that you're comfortable, and just say it 100 times till it's like your phone number. It's like, what's your name? You don't have to think about it. It's just, we make bathroom cleaning robots for office buildings. Just, it comes out. And by the way, that's practiced. Absolutely. You know, I'm not, it didn't come out like that the first time. So.
Right. Right. My assumption is that before you get up and speak at a Y Combinator event, that you would probably practice beforehand, right?
Oh my God, I can't. I'm embarrassed to tell you how many times. 100 times. That was my. I just
Really?
no. Like, that's not like an exaggeration. I just said, I'm gonna say. You don't want to memorize it, but in my mind, you want to memorize it and forget it. So you want to have those phrases in your mind. But if you say it 100 times, you'll know what it'll just come out smoother. That
Oh, absolutely.
I would definitely for other people, but that calms me down. Then I know, even if I forget everything, it's in there somewhere. You know, the
Yeah,
phrases are.
it's like being on Shark Tank. You know, when someone really tries to memorize their opening line and then they forget a line and they can't talk from then on. If you really understood your business and you can just talk from the heart, kind of thing. If you get stumped, you can just continue on from anywhere, right?
Yeah, nerves are tough, but memorization of those lines helps you just naturally be able to say them in a smooth way. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's next for SOMATIC? I assume it's just I don't know what are you ready to go into, are you physically in office buildings at this point?
Yeah,
Or
so right now, I mean, that's literally what we're working on. As soon as we end this, I'm back to kind of operations mode, where we're kind of preparing in a post-COVID, or let's say towards the end of COVID, let's say, where we can see the light in the tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, we're kind of getting ready to get that back to operations, and that's what we're doing right now. So no announcement right now, but in a very, very near future, you'll see some videos on our YouTube channel about let's say something interesting related to that. So coming very, very soon.
right. So if you type in SOMATIC on YouTube, you'll find all your videos.
Yeah, SOMATIC bathroom cleaning robot. I don't know if we yet dominate the word SOMATIC, but definitely SOMATIC bathroom will pop right up.
Definitely, and I'll leave a link below for to see those videos because they're going to be really interesting. I'm introducing a new segment on the show called Let's Ask the CEO. And so I have a couple, I come up with a couple of questions on things that are just bothering me, and I have my own response to it. And I just want to hear what a real CEO or founder, what their opinion is. So I don't know if you're ready to play that game.
Ready?
All right. So I just recently did a short video on the dumbest interview question one can never ask to a potential candidate. That question is, so tell me one challenge that you've had to go through. What was the challenge and how did you overcome it? So I made the joke that that's a wonderful question. So I was once constipated, so that was my challenge. In order to combat that challenge, I got shoved an enema up my behind. Do I get the job now? So technically I answered the question. I know it's ridiculous, but like sometimes I feel like on these interviews and these interview questions, they're not really paying attention anyways. I feel like that doesn't really help the business owner, because how do you know this guy can really do the job or not? You're going to ask them, what challenge have you gone through? Anybody can prepare for that. What is your opinion on these interview questions?
I think if somebody has worked on a hard challenge, they could just tell you about it. When we interview people, I don't really ask like any kind of set. I don't particularly ask them any pre-prepared questions. I just say, okay, what have you done? And then they tell me something that they worked on, and I just ask them. I might ask them what was hard about it, and then usually if these are engineers, so if they've done something hard, they can definitely, there's a lot of scar tissue there, and they can talk about it, and that's always something interesting. I think the problem in the way it was phrased in the case that you were talking about was just a little bit too generic. They said, "Give me a hard challenge that you worked on."
Exactly.
I think the way to do it is something like, "Tell me about something that you've worked on, like any project you want, and then, or what have you worked on lately, or something like that." And then once you're there, let's talk about what was hard about it. Right. So in the case of engineers, I feel like that actually works a lot better. In some other cases, I think it's a problem of what the interviewer is trying to get at. Like they're just trying to see like how hard of a worker are you or something like that. In the case of engineering, you want to understand kind of how they work through challenges. You can kind of pull it out, but yeah.
No, I really like that answer. I mean, right, as you mentioned, what's different about it is that you're very specific. So let's say, you need to work on a robot. You need a guy who actually knows what the hell they're doing as far as robotics go. So if you ask him a question, so tell me what you did before, meaning are you even qualified to do, you're finding out if the guy can essentially do the job or not, right?
Yep.
To just ask bluntly, tell me a challenge, what the hell are they trying to figure out? Like I had a challenge opening up my jar of peanut butter this morning and I was able to open it, I think that I like your answer. I like that answer. Yeah. And so I know you seem like a very extremely focused person. Any lesson on essentially hitting your goals, or actually, you essentially are living it seems like you're living an unbelievable life as far as like you have a goal and you actually do it. Like the amount of work that you actually do within a given amount of, you seem like a very, how may I ask how old you are? Like you're a pretty young guy also.
Well, I'm 33.
Yeah, 33. It's nothing. Like people always go on, they're 78 years old. Like I always wanted to start a business. You started 15, so like any lesson in there, like as far as how to actually like do it, or it's just about, you just got to do it.
Okay. I would say something like, working hard is, it's different than I think people sometimes refer to it at. Like there's many different types of hard work or something like that. And different kind of jobs require hard work in different ways. What might be hard for you is not necessarily hard for me, and what's really hard for me might be easy for you or enjoyable, or it doesn't feel like work even. And that's really the trick, I think, is just try to figure out something that you want to do where, yeah, it's going to be hard, but ultimately that it's not painful in that negative sense, right? It's kind of like maybe some kind of sport or working out. People are pretty familiar with those kind of things. They don't necessarily feel good all the time, but overall you like it, right? And for me, it's something like that. Like, I don't think I could do another job, so to say, because that's torture for me. Even though it might be much easier to work in a bookshop or to be a librarian or something like that, or that doesn't work for me. That's harder for me than to, do what I'm doing now. It doesn't feel like it's super hard sometimes. I mean, sometimes it feels brutal,
Right.
definitely. But in the way that you were asking it, I think that's the trick. It's the old saying, if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. That's not exactly true, right? It's not every day is, oh, I skip to work, but more days than not. That's the case, just because overall, I like it.
That's great. That's fantastic advice. Yeah, find what you love to do and just keep doing it. Yeah.
Old kind of style advice, but I don't know. I don't think I could do another kind of job. It would be sad. I really want to do this, so I try to
could
do
not
it.
imagine you at a 9 to 5 office desk job. I don't know. That's just me. I think the question would be whether, not if you'll jump off the building, but how many days will it take for you to jump off the building, I guess.
There's a lot of sacrifices that go along with doing something like that, though. So I would tell people, like, the grass is always greener, you know. You see somebody's life from the outside and you're like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Then they wake up whenever they want. There's no boss or whatever. Okay. But it's 3 a.m. and I'm laying on the floor in a toilet in Pittsburgh, and my friend's at a holiday party, and there's trade-offs. Let's put it that way.
Oh, 100%. I like Mark Cuban's line. I chose to work 80 hours a week so I wouldn't have to work 40 hours a week.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally hear that. Yeah, I definitely can see not every person would want to stick their face in a toilet in Pittsburgh. That's for sure.
Exactly.
So
I
anyway,
don't. Let's just be clear. I don't like that. But
it's part of the job. Part of the job. Yeah. So anyways, Michael, I really appreciate you having you on. I really appreciate you coming on and spending time with us. And this was a fantastic interview. So again, I just wanted to thank you for coming out.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.